You know, it's funny. The first time I did one of these, it wasn't easy. Like I didn't want to. You know, it's like just a testament to like just keep doing stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it just keeps getting easier and easier. Like so now that this is not easy, like you find the next thing that's or now that this is becoming easy, like find the next thing that's not easy, and you'll find that's the secret.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to some double digit of pulling back the curtain. We've got Erik Rock with Consignment Furniture. We've actually just shot an unofficial podcast, which may or may not be cut up into the lead-in. But thanks for joining me, Erik. So we got going and
all right.
Hit it off. So we'll try to recreate some of that. As I explained a second ago, just have a conversation here for 30, 45 minutes. Your truth, your story, what might be helpful for people to know.
Right.
The idea is giving people insights that they can use to apply in their own journeys. So let's just start with that. Your bio. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Reno, Nevada, Lake Tahoe. Had a pretty good childhood. I never met my biological father. My real dad split on my mom when she was pregnant with me. Mm-hmm. And so I was lucky. I had a guy come into my life, step in at a young age, about as early as I can remember, stepped in and took me on, married my mother, and, scary, strict stepfather that was my dad. You know what I mean? And I think from that point on, there was something about that process, I think, that sets some kind of ticking inside me at an early age. And it was always that need to try to make it real. I don't know how to describe it, but to make the stepdad real. Because everything I did, I looked up to him. I mean, I was a straight A student. I was very smart. I was very driven, even at a young age. And I describe it as a ticking. Tick, tick, tick. My heart just ticked. It was always something pushing me. Yeah. And it was so important for him to see that. You know what I mean?
So out of your respect, admiration, appreciation.
I had a stepbrother who was a year older than me.
Yeah.
And, that was his real son. And my little sister wasn't born yet. But early on, real quick, I tried to make that organic, real father-son relationship. I tried to create that with me and my dad as well. It's different, I think, from when you try to dig back into those types of feelings. It's really hard because I can barely remember last week. I'm so bad at backwards thoughts because I'm so deep into the future and all my energy is expelled forward. But I do know that there was something that pushed me very hard at a young age, and there was a big fighter at a young age. So I grew up there, big battles growing up of trying to impress my dad. I think that was it. I think a lot of guys have dad issues. A lot of girls have daddy issues or whatever, but there's something real to that. And for me, it was something that was always there, even when I got into my late teens out of high school and had some, major setbacks at an early age with drug addiction. I was a baseball player who had several injuries and was prescribed some OxyContin, and that was 2 years. That turned into 2-3 years of some of the worst times of my life. Again, hard to remember. But I do remember being able to not recognize myself when I looked in the mirror. And even then, when I was soulless, when I could not see a soul in myself and I was trying to fake it and trying to just get through and figure it out, and I'm still a teenager, as I proceed to go into college, and no one really knows how bad it is, I knew that there was still something deep in there. Like it was relentless. It was in there. I just knew it. It was actually a peace of mind that I've always had that with me. And it stems all the way back from the early days.
No, I appreciate you. Sure. So what point you went to college? Where'd you go to school?
UNR, University of Nevada.
Okay. Yep. Played some ball. How do you end up in Spokane, Liberty Lake area here?
Through those early years, searching became important for me. Searching for what, I have no clue. Yeah. Again, going back to the ticking, trying to get out of the bad years and figure out what I'm supposed to do with life. I think a lot of people have been in that position, maybe not to that extreme or maybe even worse. It's really irrelevant. There's a spot where you start searching. Like, what is a dream, number one? Like, what are your dreams? Well, Major League Baseball players, out the window. I mean, that died really quick and really, really, really fast and incredibly hard. So then what is the dream? It's lost when you thought it was going to be one thing. You get very lost. And so for me, it's weird. And people are, what's your dream? at some point I realized the dream is not a thing. It's not so finite where it can be defined. It was more of mass movement, being able to constantly achieve something. Didn't matter if it was burritos, tacos, any kind of business. That entrepreneurial mindset was always there, I think. And to tap into all that energy and all that ambition and all that drive, and to not know how or where to put it, was incredibly challenging for me, because I knew I had it and I didn't know where to start honing it, because you're always thinking about the big thing, right?
Right.
And the reality is just becoming valuable in tiny little minute ways is so much more important at a young age when you're lost.
Right. We talk about with clients all the time. They come in and people have some sense of themselves. And again, I'm talking about obviously people who are older than teenagers, but it's like a lot of good thoughts that are rattling around in your brain that you've never taken the time to try to articulate.
Right.
And then, they'll come out, but it's going to take a while. And the first take isn't going to be the best, and helping them through that. And then the second thing, I was actually just talking about this earlier and talk with some students, is I think what you were alluding to there, correct me if I'm wrong, which is school sports, see target, hit target, see target, hit target. Right. Then you get out,
so defined.
You have this energy. You got to make your own targets.
Yeah,
right. And set those own goals, whatever they may be, and not only do that, take that energy for that, but then take the energy to hit them as well. Sure. And that I think people struggle with, right? They're like, well, but chapter 6 and I study and I get an A. It's like, yeah, that's not that defined when you got it in life. You got to find more of that path. But go ahead.
Well, as a guy now that has a lot of employees, I've had hundreds of employees over the years that have worked for me. A lot of them, I mean, man, it's like I can see talent. And the talent I look for is not like skills as like the average person may define it. I look for a twinkle in their eye. It's like a feeling I get someone. It's a salesmanship in through the eye that they don't even know that they have. I can care less what kind of grades you get. It's all irrelevant to me. I can care less about how bad your past is. But there's things about certain people that I could gravitate towards. So when I find that person, I can see their path for them. Now I'm almost 30. I turned 35 in a couple of days. So I'm pretty young still, right? And I think I've achieved a lot in a short amount of time. Although if you would have asked me 5 years ago, my God, I wish I was thinking this way when I was 20. I wasted so many years. It's like I'm still pretty young and I'm just getting started here. But I've had a lot of employees and I can see their paths for them. It doesn't matter what the end game is. It's so relevant because that'll change 10,000 times as you recreate yourself over and over and over. But I can see the path there, and it starts, you bring it down to the micro little things. The gym is something I preach a lot, right? You say, okay, well, how can I get you, like Bob, to the finish line? And where the finish line is everything you've ever dreamed of. Just imagine what that feels like for me. And it's funny because when I think of everything I've dreamed of now, everything I've dreamed of really wasn't what I was after. Like, it's hard to describe what kind of oxygen you're really after when you get what you think you wanted when you were young. Right?
Sure.
So the pathway I see for young buck is really simple regiment. It's the routine first, right? A strict routine. And the gym is amazing. I think in 2018, I probably missed 7 days of 365. Christmas, I couldn't find a gym open. I could do it at home, but I'm not a home gym. I like to get out of the house and be planted somewhere. Or if I had traveling days where I had to be at the airport before 5 a.m., I work out in Hayden Lake, gym opens at 5. It was a travel day, and I couldn't get somewhere. And it's not, you need days off. For me, it's not, because here's what it is. It's like that gym time is not about my body. I could care less. The byproduct of that is a body, I suppose. But I latched on to something. When you tax your central nervous system to its max. I mean, literally, like every single day, 7 days a week, even if you just go through the motions, just get there, because what happens is the blood, the oxygen, it flows. And for me, it's become an addiction to what comes out of my brain, what I think while I'm grinding, and how I turn that into an action. So the routine of doing that actually was to get out of the bad years of drug use. Okay, you know what I mean? And it
have a healthy addiction, so to speak.
It turned that into this crazy addiction. It became about body first. And that slowly changed. Like, routine will shape you in the most amazing way. And that's a good way to start for anybody. Great way to start. Kill yourself daily. Don't take days off.
Well, and tell me if you'd agree with this or found this to be true. I know I became a morning workout guy. As you grow up and you play sports, you're kind of a 3 to 5. And then you grow up and you have family and work responsibilities. You shift early. For me, there's this weird duality between a confidence in the fact that I'm up at 5 a.m. and I'm going to lift and get some cardio in and exert that. And so there's this whole, like we've done more than most early in the day.
Sure.
Of course, there's the physiological and your mind and the correct endorphins and all that. Absolutely. But there's just that confidence. At the same time, there's this humility because, at least for me, I enjoy it. It doesn't take me long to get going. It certainly got easier now that we're years in. But there's also humility and understanding that it's a perpetual struggle, that every day starts anew, right? That you're not special. You don't get to skip 70 days. You got to go in, get the work done. And so when I get done and I'm heading into work, there's that confidence of like, I'm ready to take on the world. And yet also a humility of knowing, man, I had to get up, struggle, maybe it wasn't easy to get out of bed that morning. Maybe I wasn't feeling it during the workout, but again, it's those ancillary things that are part of the workout as much as it is the physiological well-being.
For a lot of people too, they never are consistent enough with this simple routine, because this is simple now. This is like breakfast, taking a shit, whatever. It's so routine, it's a non-negotiable. It's the only non-negotiable in my life. Mm-hmm. There will never be a negotiating factor when it comes to, I call it taxing my central nervous system. It's a non-negotiable. And the reality is no one experiences the value in it because they are not as consistent as they need to be to see what starts happening up here. Mm-hmm. The young age routine of the gym, year in and year out, slowly will shift you into at least a person of value, to the degree that if you can be that responsible with your own body, like think about it. It's like, you're going to run my business for me? You're going to try to be valuable for me when you can't even take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. And to me, one of the scariest things, you see all these young bucks all around. It's like, it's like they're procreating in record numbers, and they haven't even figured out how to take care of themselves yet. And they're bringing people into this world. It's really scary, right? So like, I see young guys and I try to mentor and coach. It's like, figure this out first. Forget everything else. Forget your dreams. Mm-hmm. Figure out a routine that is strict. Start there and watch the magic of routine slowly shape your life. There's a million tricks that I've used as I became a routine individual, and the world started happening to me. Not big things, just things starts happening, right? And as you go, it's funny, the question that you guys were going to ask me, I don't know if I'm supposed to jump ahead here.
Well, it's free form.
It's the 7 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know why you guys use 7, but
this is Dane's deal. For those of you who can't, he's sitting out. He always finds a way to hijack my podcast and come up with some stuff that he wants to know.
Well, let me tell you, you kind of gave me a template to look at, and we're not even close to what it was, by the way, because this is how I roll.
I can't.
But I'll tell you what, I did stew on that one. If I'm going to look at myself 7 years ago, me, and I'm me now, and I talk to that guy, and I'm going to give him some advice, that's one of the, I don't know why that bothered me all night, number one, that question. And the reality is like, okay, Amazon. Okay, I'm not talking about that. That's stupid to even go there, in my opinion. So what are you really going to look into the core of that guy and say, hey, man, it's like, and here's what it is, man. It's like, first of all, for me, 7 years ago was, if you go backwards from now 7 years, like year by year, month by month, all the way back to that me, it's been nothing but like mega downhill. And so flip that around. The 7 year ago me, it was constant movement upwards. Mm-hmm. I literally, this is where steam started happening, trajectory for me. You picked 7 years, so that's where I went. This is where magic started happening in my life, and I never looked back. But it's like, of course now, I could give you 10 million things that don't do, or like lessons that I had to learn the hard way and say, okay, I could skip you a lot of pain by telling you this, Erik Rock, 7 years ago. And it's like, well, that defeats the whole, that's what made me. If you're not in the flame, and if you don't feel the pressure, it's not worth it. You're not going to learn anything.
Right.
You could be told, you could read every book on planet Earth, but until you have your skin in the game, till you feel pressure on you where it literally is crippling, you do not know what you're made of. It's like a diamond is only birthed in pressure and fire. And this is the reality. You've got to put yourself in positions where you feel stress, where you feel pain, and where you feel pressure. And when you put yourself in those situations, magic starts to happen, or you crumble.
Yeah.
But you never know until you're there. And the people that crumble, it's not that they can't do it. Just keep doing it. Like keep ruining your life and watch the magic happen.
Don't you think, again, one of the things that comes out of that when I look back, and I remind myself we were talking about, the 1,000 deaths and thus the 1,000 victories you try to find that are going to be in some small and big ways parts of every day of our lives. I thinking about that question as well. Once I saw Dane's question, I think it's just that it is that don't give up, right? That right. Those cliches are true, that you can keep going. For me, that watershed moment would have been 9 years ago when the marriage fell apart and the market's crumbling as I'm trying to,
right.
And my dad wasn't in this business, and I didn't know better that you didn't get into this business if your dad wasn't in it. And built my career brick by brick by brick, and yeah, and you don't know how that story is going to end. And I think what I remind myself in the moments where we have today is like, it's going to be okay. Right. That it is that perpetual grind. And then the beauty of it, that you understand a bigger part of the human emotional spectrum,
right.
That you understand better your own strengths, that you have, even though your story may be different, maybe not as bad, maybe you may not have struggled with this, that, or whatever, that you have a greater ability to empathize, which is always going to help you connect with people.
Right.
And again, that's part of even that humility standpoint. Like, yeah, no, I'm glad I just didn't knock it out of the park from day one, because I wouldn't be able to empathize. I wouldn't
give myself any golden nuggets. It'd be a disservice if I was going to skip steps 7 years ago.
Yeah,
it totally would be.
Hang in there, it works out. Hang in there,
right,
don't
but
quit.
It's like the reality is like it's a process. You know what I'm saying? You have to be prepared for luck to hit before you can get lucky. You have to be able to accept it. You have to put yourself in a position where so much synergy. It's like you've got to first create a version of yourself without any goals. Mm-hmm. It's just something that's structured, that like pays its own bills, carries its own weight, and becomes really good at yourself. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Owning the space around you, literally being able to start articulating like what kind of person you are. Before you're thinking about this and like that, and it's like you can't even like make your own bed. I'm talking like get that guy right. Mm-hmm. Let's nano break this down to what a process is. To understand how you get to the guy that was me 7 years ago, first you had to get 7 years before that. Mm-hmm. This is how long this stuff takes, and most people want yesterday, especially millennials. It's bad.
And coming from some of the things you described as a kid, mm-hmm. trying to feel, I'm sure he had love and for you, but to reach there, then to hit the lows you hit, right. as you described, to come up. You had to go. You got stripped back to basics,
right? And that's the whole key.
And nothing could be taken for granted. And it sounds like that was the key. Then,
sure.
Well, you see that a lot of people. To your point, you don't have yourself together, and yet you want to run my company type of a deal, right. Where it's like, so you know how to fix the world, but your marriage is in shambles. Right. You don't treat your friends.
It looks like you just woke up, buddy, and it's 11 o'clock.
You just woke up. You have all this stuff, and yet you're
especially when you're around young people a lot. I'm in an industry where I get a lot of young bucks working for me, a lot of young movement. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of industries are like that. And we provide opportunity, but I love to be a mentor. It's one of the most amazing things about business is being able to give back. And what I realize is like, that's one of the biggest secrets to success is when you don't think about yourself. Mm-hmm. Okay, when you can take yourself out of the equation and you start thinking just what can I give everybody, and give the world around me. When you think about everything you can give and you give it till you wring out the last drop every single day, magic in your life will start happening, I promise you. When you can solve problems for other people, when you can take ownership of something that is not yours, these are skills that you got to learn right here before you can go know how to play the game.
Right.
And life is a big game, and I get a lot of flack for saying that. It is a massive chess game in my head. Mm-hmm. You've got to play it right, okay, to advance your position in life. And the more you advance your position, here's the beauty. The more positions of other people you can give opportunity to advance as well.
You got to find that you're happier. I know when I was going, through that period, and there have been others, but that was bad. Marriage dies, grandfather who I named the firm after dies, markets in a free fall. It was a pretty challenging time, but it was when I finally stopped fixating on myself, my own problems. For me, I just had a friend say, "Hey, come volunteer coaching these third grade football
I love
kids,
that
right?"
Yep.
And I was just,
I don't have time, but there's magic in that.
You make time to give, to be about things outside yourself.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a problem not to get too I don't know where we're at on our field here, but even further field or into some big societal thing. But I think it's the problem with society. Everybody's spending way too much time thinking about themselves.
Yeah, right. And social media may have a big role there because it's like you become addicted to the process of seeing what everyone else is doing. And then on the flip side, everyone's seeing what you're doing. So it's like,
you're going to find
you.
You're going to find you're really happy when you're doing things for other people.
Right.
Yeah.
So, one thing I do is I think about death. It's like, oh, you want to hear, I got to give, should I give all of my secrets away? Yeah. Okay. This is a good one. I'm telling you, it's a good one. And it took me a long time to really figure this out because fear is something that is so powerful. It's one of the most powerful emotions that you can have. And,
fear and love.
Most people feel fear and don't even recognize. They wouldn't call it fear. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I know I need to call him, but I'll do it tomorrow. Like any procrastinating thought should stop you. Just stop. If you can like have a thought and have a feeling and become really good at recognizing what that is and stopping and just saying yes, no matter what it is. It could be the dumbest thing. Just say yes, and that means right now. Mm-hmm. Here's the trick for me. It's like, because you get into some bigger, heavier stuff, and it's like, I think about death in almost every decision I do now. Like if it's something that's like that weighs on my brain, and now it's calculated. Now you big money at stake. There's stuff there. There's this and that. Getting in the flame sometimes is a little more strategic now than it used to be. Mm-hmm. But for a certain period in this 7-year period, just get into flames, get into pressure. Right. Just get into it, and then deal with the rest later. Right? Well, most people get really close and they can't do it. It's like no. Well, hold on. Think about this. You're going to die tomorrow. You're going to die tomorrow. You are going to die tomorrow. All of a sudden, what it didn't stop you from taking the leap that you're about to take. It just took the fear out of it. Because when you put death in front of you, all of a sudden, all your insecurities about whatever decision you're about to make, they're gone. Mm-hmm. Bye. Mm-hmm. Death is so important to think about because life is short. Yeah. And if you want to do stuff in this world and you want to make an impact, and let me be honest, you cannot, jumping back to this point, you cannot give back in ways that really have a massive effect if you do not create. You've got to be a creator in this life. And to do that, you've got to put yourselves in positions where there's stress and there's pressure. And to do that means you can't be afraid. And if you can't be afraid, just think about dying tomorrow and it'll probably solve that question for you.
Well, and I'll speak for me. I don't know that the fear, you go through that cycle you just described. I wouldn't maybe have described it the same way, which I think was great. But I had my own spin on it, and then you do it, and you're like, oh, I didn't die, and that did work out, or it failed, but still okay, and I learned from it. And then it's not as nerve-wracking. And what I found as things have gone up is, a lot of things that would have made me really nervous and maybe should have, don't anymore. Right. And so there were a number of things I did last year, from starting doing this to giving some speeches in front of some pretty prominent audiences that I just did literally because they would make me nervous. Right. And I think correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it goes away. You just learn to accept it as a necessary part of the process.
And I'll go a step further.
And then it grows, right?
If you feel it, it probably is telling you that you're on the right track.
Yeah.
And that's a key indicator that, then do it. You know what I mean? It's like you can flip that feeling on its head. And all that feeling is Mother Nature saying, like, no, we need you to be in a safe place. And that's the whole key to life is being able to procreate, right? This is what life's telling you needs to happen, and you need to be in safe places to do that. So anything that may be an unsafe thing, Mother Nature is telling your gut to, it gives you these warning things. And if you can learn to conquer that and to turn that into a tool, that's a tool for success easily.
Everything, so much of life is, part of Kantian philosophy, truth and contradiction. It's that. I'll talk to people. It could be their personal lives. There's this trust your heart, trust your gut. I'm like, nah. To your point, if it seems too easy, too right, too comfortable, I would tell you, nothing's easy. Don't do it. No. I find that when I'm leaning, exactly like you just said, when I'm leaning into something that makes me a little bit uncomfortable, or I know is going to create personal sacrifice, it could just be saying I'm sorry. It could be apologizing. Right. It could be a new workout. It could be whatever. That therein lies where I should be I'm not being reckless, but
I get it.
A lot of people, it just didn't feel right. I don't know that a lot that I do that's right. That,
it's funny because
not in the way that people use that phrase.
When you start keeping yourself in close proximity to other winners, right? You're on a championship football team all of a sudden, right? Everyone's a winner. This is the top tier in their class, right? Everyone's a winning at everything they do. Proximity to winners is really important, and I find that everyone I talk to in the year, it's like it's the weird energy of the world. I circulate around winners, and you kind of forget what the just normal mentality is. And the normal mentality is different. It's hard. It's not from your high horse. It's just the reality of proximity to people that think big and do great things with the life that they've been given changes you, and it's hard to remember what you were thinking when you were 21.
Yeah, everybody's got yeah.
I mean, it's like, what the,
you're not born this way. It's just by tacting into that struggle time again. Let me ask you about this. This is something I was talking about with a friend the other day, and he's like, I hadn't thought about it like that, but yeah, I think so. And in my line of work, run a wealth management company, I'm going to call Erik Rock and see if he wants to be a client. Right. Not right now, or maybe you don't call back. Obviously, a hypothetical.
Oh yeah.
And so many people will stop. And what I found, again, this isn't just about prospecting or building a business. It's just about stuff is, and you've alluded to this, so I've got to believe whether you've consciously thought of it this way or not. It's kind of what you're talking about, which is just put good activity into the world constantly, and don't get fixated on, well, I called him and he didn't call me. I found, whether it's the events we throw, and again, this isn't just professionally, it happens personally too. I just do good stuff. I'm begetting good, meaningful, intentional activity. And I don't know, I don't spend any time really thinking about the percentages. I just know that as my activity expands, more good stuff comes down. But what I was explaining to him is, sounds like, back to that, I tried 10 things and I failed. So you were going 1, nothing, 1, nothing, 1, where you should have just been thinking, you say, bring the life out. Just exhausting. Put good stuff out there, good activity, be diligent, be disciplined, follow the process. It might come out of left field. It'll ping around the universe and come out.
The universe will find you.
But the more stuff I put up, the more it's going to squeeze something back down, right?
At some
Does that
point,
make sense?
It makes perfect sense. At some point, there's always some force of nature, some person, something that has the potential to change your life. And what I mean by change it is to give you an opportunity to grab onto. Doesn't mean money. Doesn't mean you're getting cars. It means that you have an ability to attach yourself to something great. One of my biggest philosophies in life is to always attach yourself to things that are greater than you. And whatever that is, find a way and attack it relentlessly with passion and purpose. And you'll find you become a heartbeat to another individual who has a footprint that it can allow you to infiltrate. Whether you learn from that and take it into your own business, which oftentimes is not the right way, because 85% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. So there's no guarantee there. It's like everyone's like, oh, how do you do it? Like, oh, just go start your own business. It's stupid. Hold on. Like, that's not always true. And this is coming from an entrepreneur. You could attach yourself to me, make yourself so valuable that when my next move comes, it's a no-brainer who's in line for it. And when the next line comes, it was you spearheading it. And next thing you know, you own my company. You gave me my exit. Yeah. And all it did was figuring out that, hey, I'm going to sink my teeth here and watch it, because you had enough spidey senses to know that, hey, proximity to this Erik Rock cat, pretty smart.
It's a different variant of what you were bringing up earlier, though, which is the people who can't make their bed or tie their shoes, obviously being facetious, but then want all this responsibility.
That's got to be done first.
People
you'll
like,
see it.
Well, I'm putting in half ass efforts at whatever I do, but when I get my chance to have Erik's company, then I'll be ready to go. Like, you don't even be ready.
Because
not only would you not give them that opportunity, they wouldn't be even if you did give them the opportunity, they wouldn't be ready to grab it.
You know, that I
see that a lot.
I jump that process like it's quick. It's not, but it doesn't matter what company you work for. If you see something that's valuable and you're smart and you attach yourself to it, the first thing is, before your most likely mindset's geared towards that, you're doing pretty routine things. You have a system down that's for your personal hygiene, the way you look, smell, talk, the clarity in your eyes. All that stuff is so valuable, because it's like, whether you believe it or not, everyone's reading you, no matter where you go in life. This is the big secret to the world. Everything you
Appearance matters.
Everything you do, the spidey senses of humanity are picking up on it. And I'll tell you what, the winners in life, the guys that have achieved a lot, the ones with huge, large economic footprints, their instincts tell them everything. And that you better have an instinctual feeling to somebody that you take good care of yourself. Because if you can't even take care of your own health I mean, that's the one thing, right? It's like,
assuming you're blessed with
very
it, right?
simple.
Yeah.
Very simple there.
Yeah.
This should be a no-brainer. You have one
Right.
heartbeat. You have one heart. You have one brain. This is, and you could always be worse. You know what I mean? But if you can't even nurture the two legs and the two arms and like the spine of your body, you can't tell you're trying to make an effort towards your own self. And that's hard when you're young. You know, you just want to party and play and screw around. So it's hard, I guess.
And to be clear for people who listen, because I don't think everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur or will find happiness there, or
it's
a CEO
it's
or an
intense.
owner. I was having this conversation just last night, actually, with a really good friend. And I said, whether you want to be, he works at a nonprofit, and he was explaining he's the head of it, very good at what he does. And he was explaining to the people who work there, he's like, I know this isn't fair, but you got to understand there's a big part of the populace that thinks you're here because you're a burnout, you're lazy, you didn't want to really excel or try, which is not fair, right? I mean, they're doing amazing work with the youth. There may be people who that applies to. But we're both talking about whatever it is, you do it with passion and purpose.
Yeah, right.
And you may not have working legs.
Right.
But then you'll see people who, I mean, the inspirational videos of the kids who are wrestling that don't have legs, or they're hiking up, whatever you've got, whatever you've gifted, wherever you're at.
Right.
When I see,
is this stuff taught in schools, like elementary school?
No, I saw a TSA agent, right? I don't think they're real high on the popularity scale at times, but the guy brought so much. I'm sitting there and I'm like, he stood out. It was warm, inviting, singing, talking to my little girls coming through, and I've gone through SeaTac countless times. He's always there, bringing passion. I don't care what it is you do, do it well, do it with passion, and I have all the respect for you in the world.
That's a fulfilling life, by the way.
Totally.
When you know you've given everything, that's fulfilling, and when you really get down to what people are after, it's fulfillment. That's it. It's not a thing. Things don't give you fulfillment. I think the movement is what gives you fulfillment, and the movement oftentimes doesn't come unless they're giving the world everything you have. They like go hand in hand.
Well, to the point of success, finances, role, what is your job?
Right.
It's that ends is rather what we're talking about is that means.
Right.
Did you do it with Verve?
Yeah.
You're the greatest TSA agent that's ever been.
That's cool.
Right?
I love guys like that.
I respected it.
I love guys like that.
And in its own way, everything has its own challenge, because for him, like a lot of people, monotony's got to set in, right?
Right.
This person, he's found this way to overcome it. There's something special about him.
Sure.
That in what could have been a monotonous thing, he's bringing a unique take on it. It's a random thought, but it could apply to anything. And that's what I see with people is they're waiting for this thing, this moment, this position, this role, or conversely, maybe they think, well, this isn't important, or I don't have the talent to be a pro baseball player or the, owner of consignment furniture. Have we said that yet, Dane? I don't know. We've even gotten to what this guy actually does for a living. Motivational speaker. And jewelry.
We do quite a
but do you know what I mean? Like, that's not the key thing. You can be respected.
That's my point.
Real winners will respect and appreciate and admire you no matter what you're doing, if you're doing it to the utmost of your ability. Physicality, mental acumen, whatever it is.
I'll tell you what, when you can...
That's why Special Olympics make us cry, right? It's like, we're not here because you're going to set a 100-meter dash record. We're here because your setback, you're giving you're maybe pushing harder because you didn't have some of the natural talent than the person who's going to win.
The magic of effort, especially when the chips are stacked against you, there's more value in that than anything. If you come from the worst of circumstances and your effort exceeds the average humans, just that, it's more valuable than the guy that's giving the same effort that didn't come from tough circumstances. I mean, there's so much value in that effort process. And anything in life, especially in a country where freedom is still true, right? You can come from the worst place on earth in effort and proximity to passion daily. Like that just circular, momentous thing that drives someone can lead you to every place you've ever dreamed. It can get you anywhere. You could literally. I got a buddy who literally died 7 times from overdoses. Okay, and he's a kid that worked for me. He still does work for me. I see him as a big player in my future. But I'll tell you what, man, what he gives to the world, the energy he gives to the world now, he got through it, right? He got through it, but he shouldn't be here. And his mom was a nurse, and when they rushed him into the ER, she was working that night. and he was pronounced dead on the scene, and somehow he seventh life really. But here's a kid. Oh my God, he makes me happy. This twinkle in his eye. That's the thing I talk about, right? His passion for life, to overcome that process and get out of it. It's like, all right, well, I don't think you can get any worse than pronounced dead 7 times. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't think your life can get anywhere. I'm trying to think, where is rock bottom? Well, I mean, maybe that's it. I don't know.
We keep talking about divisions and divisiveness. I'm not trying to be political here, but I think when you're talking about messages that don't come down with the kids, a lot of people, whether they were poor, a minority, or maybe some kids you think, well, I'm not going to have a chance because I'm a middle-class white kid and that's not popular these days. Whatever it is.
When you think that way, it's already bad.
It's already
You've
bad.
Already set yourself up
and
for
to
failure.
your point, when whether it's the magical TSA agent, the twinkle, the verb, the passion, that same thing we're talking about, that it factor that people have. There's actually, contrary to these obstacles, people who are looking at that knowing it's going to come in all different shapes, forms, from all different types of upbringings. And I've met some kids who came from a lot of money, and they're grinding and hustling like they don't have to. That's its own interesting thing, because there's
it's the same
countless
dichotomy.
people will talk about. There's a struggle in wherever you're coming from. Life was really easy for you. That's an obstacle to overcome.
Sure.
Life was really hard for you. That's an obstacle to overcome.
Yeah,
but when people can see that and see that you've overcome that,
I love that stuff.
Then I've got to grab you and pull
to me, it's
you
more valuable.
into my universe.
Like it just is, right?
Yep.
But when again, not getting political, but when you peg this against that or that against that, and you become like a mind that agrees with some of these philosophies, like you're already setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's not true. People are waiting to cheer you to the other side.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. 100%. Oftentimes, it's
there's always jerks.
You know,
I mean, that's part. But most people, particularly as you mentioned, I just was reading an article recently around one of the common traits around highly successful individuals. And again, we're not just talking business, entrepreneur, all of it, politics, teachers, that they love to mentor. I mean, you've brought that up a couple of times, but it was one of those common traits their whole life.
It's selfish not to try to mentor something or someone.
That was the legacy.
What's cool? Another great tactic is if you can instill someone at a young age to be a mentor to other people, even if they don't have a pot to piss in, let's call it what it is. Like if you all of a sudden you change the perception of like you're trying to help someone out when you really don't even have anything yourself. Like you start that process of it's all psychology, really. I mean, getting someone to understand a process is just purely psychological. If you shift your thinking, right, it's like, oh, you're stressed out, you're freaking out, think about death. Or on the flip side, it's like if things are going wrong, all of a sudden just stop and think about something that can make you cry because you love it so much. Like think about your mother. It doesn't matter what it is. If you stop a negative emotion and you just stop it and you turn that same energy into a thought of gratefulness, you'd be shocked like how all of a sudden it like switches the entire day for you. Everything switches. It's like you can't be touched when you shift a thought.
Well, you can't have passion without purpose. And Simon Sinek, there was a commencement address, I think, with the start with why, and
that's the leaders eat last guy.
Yeah. Great insight. So he was talking. He had this story about having run a race, and they were giving out free bagels, and his friend could only see the line, and he could only see the bagel. I think if there's anything that drives me stark raving, again, all these different things. I'm like, hey, Erik, we should go do this. You're like, yeah, but I don't know. Like, wouldn't that mean we'd have to? And I'm like, there's nothing that sets me up. Oh, wouldn't that necessitate change, working? The people who only see the obstacles, right? When you're like, there's a way. Right. Yeah, but there's a boulder here. Can we go around it, underneath it, through it? Do we just have to literally? And this is the other thing, because everyone's like, well, be smart, go around. Or you might have to pick up the smallest little pickaxe you have and chip at that thing for 8 years.
Just jump into the
7
fire,
years.
man. Especially when you're young, don't think too hard. Just get into pressury situations regularly.
Let's get a little bit into your business.
Okay.
What you're doing, because you're obviously a passionate guy. You like mentoring. Yep. We probably don't have time for the whole background, but you run consignment furniture.
Consigned furniture is our business.
How does it tell us about the
We're
company?
about to open location number 4. We're across 3 different states.
Where are you at right now?
Reno, Nevada, Lake Tahoe, service that area.
Yep.
We're here in Liberty Lake, largest store in the United States of America. It's the largest consigned furniture footprint that there is in that industry.
There you go.
We own property in Riverstone. We're going to develop a real high-end design studio type feel with the consignment angle. And then Boise just opened up a 50,000 square foot store down there last March.
What are some common misconceptions people have around consignment furniture?
Well, number one, I'll just start with what we've done in Liberty Lake because this is something I'm really proud of. We created a model that does not exist anywhere in the country. And it's neat to be a guy that, put together, and it didn't happen overnight. And it's funny, going back to the 7-year thing, I never in a million years would have imagined what it could be back then. Mm-hmm. I was just trying to figure out how to tie a shoe, right? Mm-hmm. with passion and purpose. Right. But every time we hit a plateau, we capitalized on it with stretching out even further. Like we would recapitalize any perceived win with maybe a perceived loss. Mm-hmm. Kept stretching the limits of what was possible, rethinking what a footprint can do. Mm-hmm. Investing in real estate. We own all the dirt under all our stores. We bought this Liberty Lake building. It's a 60,000 square foot building. It was built in 2008 for $9.1 million. It was an Ashley Furniture Home Store building.
I remember that.
Got in some trouble. The owner of that got in some trouble, and the owner of the building, who was out of Oregon, let that Ashley franchisee out of the lease, thinking he can do it. And right then, the market conditions around circulating 2006, 7, and 8 made that impossible. And that building sat vacant for 5 years. And every day, I would drive down this street and look at it. Now, at that point, obviously, I've had some success in the business in and of itself.
Yeah. So you were in the area. You had
we owned the market. By that time, I already owned this market. And when I moved, we started the store in Reno. My dad did. I thought it was stupid. We grew up in the pharmacy business. My grandpa owned a pharmacy for 50 years. And I remember even as a small child, literally in the back room, putting labels on prescriptions. I used to deliver prescriptions and flowers.
It's kind of scary, Eric. No offense.
Oh, it is. But I mean, it's like I'm not that old, but this is a different time, Yeah. And I remember my dad talks about his different time, and my grandpa talks about milking cows, his different time. Sure. He passed away. But I always kind of came from that family. Is my dad took some hits in 2005, 2004, 2006. All these years were pretty tough on our family. Bankruptcy crushed him right in the face, and he got into some land development, was building a shopping center, and out of the ashes, before the ashes, he, just to keep it going, he drove a tractor, he sold cars, he became a general manager at a Long's drugstore. That was his background. He'd run the family business for his whole life, basically. And the development thing caught him off the wrong time. Now, it would have been a genius move if he could have waited those years, but he couldn't. Banks came calling, and it was a tough time. It was big shopping centers that he was after. And I was in college trying to figure my own, get my own health back. Yeah. But out of that, he all that stuff, he wanted to get back in the game. My mom didn't want him to.
That's
the
awesome.
Entrepreneur game was something that came out, and he saw an opportunity, bit at a tiny little pissant consignment store, excuse my language, in Reno, Nevada. And at some point, I kept seeing his maneuvering, and I actually went into the business one time and everything. This is freaking cool. I don't know why. It was cool. It was interesting. It was there was so much visual stimulation. It was a neat model, even though I didn't know what a model meant at that time. It just was neat. I liked it. And at some point, I said, I should get involved with this because I can add value, because I have crazy energy and I'm talented and I don't know what I'm going to do anyway. And so I did. I got involved with the business, and as that thing started to take off, I moved all the way to North Idaho. We opened up a store. We had a family connection to in Coeur d'Alene. Hayden, yeah. My uncle's is the CEO at Northwest Specialty Hospital, and they bought a building right off the freeway in Post Falls. We got in that building. I lived above that store for about a year. It sucked. I just gotten married to my awesome bride, and that was a rough year.
That's a thing for another time, is whether it's your mom, your wife, the women who get drug along, and again, sometimes the men. It's not only men that are entrepreneurs, but
my wife's the champion.
The support with a spouse, whoever they are.
My wife is one of the most strict. Oh God, she's a backbone to my world. Yeah. Completely opposite from me. Yeah. I'm in the space. I'm crazy. I bounce everywhere. She is very consistent,
calm,
solid. Yeah. Her words are well thought out. She doesn't throw up information the way I do. Yeah. But she stuck with me. She went through it. We got through it.
Cool.
And we proceeded on a journey to create something that did not exist anywhere else in the United States, and it really hasn't. So there's this business.
It's high-end stuff, right?
This business isn't brand new. Well, when we got into Liberty Lake, we started realizing like we were very narrow-minded in what we could accomplish. The consignment angle is amazing. It's what creates the experience. And for years, I started selling that. Every advertising dollar I had was sold for one thing, the experience. And I won't lie, I primarily focused on high net worth. Yeah. Because the rest of the stuff hit me whether I want to or not, and it wasn't that exciting. But the stuff that would blow your mind, stuff you've never seen before, the rarities, the oddities, the uniqueness, it would come out of some of these crazy high net worth homes, or just uniqueness in general, which may not necessarily equivocated to high net worth, but it still came. Mm-hmm. You still had to focus on what you want, and years of focusing on that became an obsession of mine, trying to recreate the wheel. We tapped into a lot of local people's infrastructures who had built long-term reputations here. We were very creative with our advertising dollar. But again, still now looking back on it, very narrow-minded, but I think it's part of the process. I had to achieve this first before I could do the next thing. Yeah. And when we bought this building in Liberty Lake, that was scary. That was hard to describe what that was because there was a lot of risk. I was risking everything that we had, the business had, on a building that was incredibly large, larger than any other consignment store in the country, incredibly expensive. And honestly, like, I don't think... And I looked at it for 2 years. It took 3 months to get a deal done, and then we were in escrow forever. And that's when I didn't sleep. That was probably the one time I can remember I wasn't good at sleeping, was when we were in escrow.
From the time you decided you wanted to go to the time you were moving stuff in was 2 years.
It was a long, about 2 year process. This is how far in advance I was on a prize that didn't exist yet. I mean, I somehow randomly got a key to that building from Carl Gunzel. And I never gave it back to him.
Are we outing a crime here? Is this?
I don't know.
This is all in the up and up.
I own it now. So
Statute of limitations is over. Yeah. There's this time I broke into my own now building.
I used to go in that building, man, and just walk around aimlessly. You know, I told this story in a speech that I did, and I liked the story that came out of me. I just kind of came out, and it's so true. When we bought the building, I thought, you know what, this is the only time that this thing, and I'm jumping around here, but this is the only time this building's going to be empty.
That's how my mind works.
This massive building, and it's the only time we're going to have a chance to fully clean it. So I called this like commercial cleaning company. I found them on Google or whatever I did, called them, and you know, the building was spotless. It was like brand new. It was pristine. Every wall was perfect. I mean, there was no reason to clean it, but I don't know. We should probably clean this damn thing because we're going to start moving in, and so we set a date. I go there, and I go in the building. Whoever's there is a couple cars in the parking lot. They're already in. I left them a key in a lockbox, and I go in, and here these people are. It's a short little plump lady, a small child, and like a really skinny, like really old lady, and they're like there with a broom and a mop, and I'm like, this is who they sent to clean this 60,000 square foot monster retail building. I mean, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. And her name was Barb. Listen, Barb is very important to me now. Barb is one of the most important people in my life. If you do not have a Barb in your life, I highly suggest you find one, because you do never judge a book by its cover. Every instinct in me said this is ridiculous. Well, that's when I first met Barb. But we went around that whole building. There's nothing to clean. I mean, it was spotless. That is a dream building to move into. However, every window on that building all the way around it, and it circulates all the way around, you could clearly see we need to clean the windows at the very least. Yeah. But as we examined the windows, every window, from the front doors to the back doors, and you know, this big monster building, you imagine what a brand new Ashley building looks like. There's a lot of windows. Yeah. Was littered with fingerprints, nose marks, greasy forehead marks, like the cuffling marks that you put. And it was honestly, I do remember this moment, because I don't remember a lot very clear. But I remember being really proud, almost like where tears could come out of your eyes, because every single one of those fingerprints, those cuff marks, every one of those greasy forehead and chin and nose, they were me. Those were my crazy face 2 years looking at that building. I would obsess over it. I'd walk around, and so it wasn't just the like business game. It was the capitalization of a great idea, and then moving that money here and being able to be an owner, have a real estate venture where your businesses can go in them. Like, I started seeing a vision, and real estate became really important to me. That was the biggest single move of my life, was being able to put myself in a position to facilitate that transaction. Mm-hmm. And all those fingerprints represented me telling myself that something was impossible. Because I used to say, there's no way I can do this. Like, where are we going to get the down payment money? Like, how can I afford it? Like, can we even fill, all the doubt. Those fingerprints represented everything. So it was a big moment in our life. We moved into that building. Story. And the rest is history, man. We created something pretty amazing in that space, and it's still becoming more and more dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know Dane said it's his favorite place. I'll confess I haven't been.
Oh,
but I'm gonna come.
I'll expect your honest feedback
and look forward to it. Let's do this again.
Yeah, I'd love to.
There's so many things to explore. Such a pleasure.
Hey,
to
we're
meet
just getting
you.
started.
Absolutely,
brother.
Thanks
that was a
so
lot
much.
of fun.
Yeah,
Thanks, Tim.
appreciate it.